Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, good morning to you from the afternoon here.
Good morning from the afternoon. It's afternoon there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, in the real world.
But do you know what's weird is you sound kind of like it's really early morning.
Yeah, I mean, that is sort of a consequence of the last 10 days or so and being extremely jet-lagged and tired. I fell asleep in my chair a little while ago, which I never do. I'm not a fall asleep kind of guy, but I have been struggling a little bit with the jet lag since I got back. My voice, I did a lot of talking out there, so it's a bit rough around the edges, but I think we can agree those are pretty much first world problems in the grand scheme of things, so I won't complain too much.
That's very good of you. I mean, yeah, it is, we're the ones who are really working hard on the tour. I know the players are doing double sessions and playing football matches, but all the chatting and handshaking we have to do really does take it out of us. I have all the jet lag to look forward to.
Oh, yeah. Good luck with that.
Except because I'm still here. I'm still in Philadelphia as we speak. But I'm a bit concerned I might not get to come back today because I've had a few emails from American Airlines about weather warnings. Some serious storm action is happening over the east coast of America. So I tried to call them this morning. They said, call us to change your flight if we might have to change it. I called them and an automated voice told me that it was a 3-hour wait to speak to somebody.
3-hour wait. Your call is important to us. Jesus.
I don't know if that was just like a bluff to put me off. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's tell them it's a 3-hour wait, and then only 5 people will stay on the line. But I was not one of those 5 people. So in theory, I returned to the UK tonight, but in practice,
you never know.
Who knows?
You never know. Yeah, there was a bit of a storm over New York on Friday night. It was a lot of rain, some lightning and thunder and stuff like that. But it passed over fairly quickly. I haven't really been looking at the US weather to see what the story is, but hopefully, fingers crossed, you'll be able to get out because I'm sure at this point you are looking forward to being at home again.
I am, certainly. Listen, people of America. You've been very hospitable. I've loved it here. But
there comes a point,
There comes a point comes a time in a man's life when he just wants to fall asleep in his chair at home,
Yeah, just put your duck mask to one side and
it's time to take it off, guys. It's very sweaty in there.
Yeah.
I need to go home, put my duck mask in the washing machine and, get on with my life.
We had some... yeah, go on.
Go on.
I was just going to say there was some sort of weird string of coincidences while we were in the US, in that when we were standing at the event in Philadelphia with a guy called Andrew who had a twin brother called James, another guy came over and was like, my name is Andrew James, whatever his surname was. And I went for a coffee in New York when I got to New York, because I went home via New York, and went into a coffee shop, and there was a dog who saw me and started wagging his tail. So I got my coffee and went over and sat down, and the dog came over to say hello. The dog's name was Dublin. I was like, I'm from Dublin. What's going on here? It turns out they got the dog on March 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day, which is, what they called in Dublin. But Archer, my dog, was born on March 17th. And then...
No way.
Yeah. Then in the airport in JFK, I was sitting at the bar waiting for my plane to board. A woman sat down beside me, got chatting to her as you do. I don't quite remember how the subject of age and birthday came up, but it did. Her birthday was my birthday. Same day in September. Kind of crazy. So I feel like there was a...
What does it all mean?
I don't know. Maybe nothing. Probably nothing. But I'm, very suspicious of glitches in the Matrix and things like that,
Yeah. The script writers of the Truman Show are getting lazy.
Yeah.
Using the same names all over again and same dates. That is very weird. Serendipitous Is that the right word?
I mean, I suppose. No, does serendipity not involve some measure of good fortune or something as well?
Just do you not consider that good fortune?
Well, I really enjoyed meeting the dog.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a great dog, and I had
That's the good fortune bit.
That's the good fortune part. The rest maybe just coincidence. How was the wrestling? Yeah,
it was fun, man. I sort of managed to. For those who don't know, I went over to Ohio on a sort of pseudo work trip to watch some sweaty men cuddling each other in a ring, and it was everything I dreamed of and more. So that was fun. Saw a bit of Ohio, some bits good, some bits not so good, and then did a long drive back to Philly through another storm. Storms. It doesn't bode well.
No.
In a literal sense.
No.
So, yeah. I mean, when you say you haven't kept an eye on the weather, I had a quick Google about like East Coast storms, and the main thing I saw is that apparently a hurricane is brewing. So, yeah, feeling pretty good about my flight home.
I mean, that is potentially the biggest kind of storm there is, the hurricane thing.
It's right up there, Andrew. It's right up there. So I think it's more in kind of the Florida area. But, the other thing about hurricanes is they can be quite big and unpredictable. So I don't really know what's going on. I guess the long and the short of it is I live here now.
I am just looking at the JFK website.
Do I want to know about this?
Well, I'm seeing the word delayed a lot.
That's good, because yesterday it was saying cancelled a lot. So we're going in the right direction. I mean, this is why I imagine there is like a wait time of several hours to speak to somebody. My plan is basically to get to the airport early and, I don't know, cry maybe?
That would do it.
Throw myself, prostrate on my knees, and explain, I've been on the Arsenal tour. I've had to drink alcohol every night for 2 weeks. The Americans made me do it. They kept buying me drinks. Please, I need to go home and just drink tap water.
There's no place like home.
Yeah. And go to bed at the normal time. So maybe that will work. Or the other option would be to be like, don't you know who I am? I'm Johnny Big Shot, the world's leading football podcaster. I think would that fly?
That might work all right, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's nothing people enjoy more than podcasters getting above their station.
Do you know what? After the final friendly against Liverpool, I tried to come and meet you in a bar near the stadium, right? At Xfinity Live.
Oh, yes.
Near Lincoln Financial Field. And they wouldn't let me in because I had a bag, right? I had a little bag with a laptop in it. And I don't know, that presented a real issue for them. I don't know what they thought I was going to do. Maybe they thought I was going to pour the beers into my bag and make off with them.
That was so strange. So strange.
But the guy, I was with Kai Kainak and James Ollie, and they were like, you can't come in. And I was like, I'm media, please. I did my falling on my knees thing. I was like, please, I'm media. Like clutching a lanyard desperately.
Journalist.
Je suis journalist. And he was like, no. And I was like, okay, I've tried my Johnny Big Bollocks method. So I thought I'll just try a different tack with the security guy. And I went, that's not very nice.
You said like, my friends are in there. That might have been better.
I just was like, he was like, no, you can't come in. And I was like, but that's not very nice. And he looked at me like no one had ever said that to him before. And I think probably with just reason. And I think for a second he was so confused that he almost caved. But then he was like, well, they are the rules. And I had to respect him.
Well, he was only there to uphold those rules. Yeah, fair enough.
Listen, can't have bags in bars. It's a thing.
It's fucking nuts. I don't really get it. But there you go. The rules are the rules. How have you been keeping up with Arsenal stuff? I found it really tough, actually.
Yeah. What do you mean? Since you got back or while you were out here?
Yeah, because I don't know what day it is and I don't quite know what's been happening. And while I was over there, I really wasn't sort of online very much. Like I wasn't using Twitter and stuff like that, which is where all the football news seems to happen. So I found it a little bit difficult. I read the blog every day, which was good. Reading Lewis and Tim and Andrew sort of kept me in the loop a little bit. But of course, you're out there working more than I was, maybe doing your trip was a bit more work focused than mine. So, how on top of things are you right now?
Well, as you'll know, I was working full time, and it's very important that the Athletic know that.
I would say you went.
Can you corroborate?
I can confirm. I think you went above and beyond.
Overtime. Some people say I was just doing overtime.
Well,
yeah. Networking is part of my job, Andrew. but no, I think I'm kind of okay. Last couple of days, I'm a bit sketchy, but I don't get the sense I've missed anything particularly.
I don't think so either. I don't think so. We'll try and get into the few bits and bobs that are happening, but again, it is a summer Arsecast extra, so we might do a few questions throughout the show rather than just in part two. And this was one that came up a little bit in conversations that I had with people out there. John Hussein on the Discord, he says, welcome back. Is a competitive game now inevitable in the USA? Full grounds, definitely local support, but many can take 1 or 2 weeks off to travel. It would distort the league, and I support the AST's motion, but money talks. I'm presuming the AST are very, very much against this. And a team called Arsenal, in brackets Terry, says, reflecting on your time spent in the States, what's your feeling on this idea that a competitive Premier League match will be played in the US? As an American Gunner, I don't want it. I understand it costs me more to go to the Emirates, but, what conversations did you have with people out there, and what do you think about, that idea? Is it a case that the more teams go out there, the more inevitable that kind of thing might become?
Yeah, and I mean, there have been pretty much all the big clubs out here this summer, Manchester United, Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, not Tottenham, as far as I'm aware.
Where did they go?
I don't know. Timbuktu or somewhere like that, I think, was their preseason tour. I don't know. Should we find out?
Yeah, where did Spurs go? I need to be more specific. It's not really giving me very much. Just Google. Where did Spurs go this summer? They went to South Korea.
Of course.
And
where team captain is from.
Yes, indeed. And I think that's it.
Wow, okay. And potentially Japan. Is that they played Vissel Kobe? Are they a Japanese team? I think so. Okay. But anyway, Asia they went to. I think there is a degree of inevitability about it. I think what's interesting is I think there's a sort of fundamental misconception, which is that I think the way it's portrayed to us in the UK is like the fans out here are ravenous for it. They really want it. Whereas my experience of speaking to people, kind of the more committed a Premier League fan they are, the less they tend to want these games to come over. They seem to have more concerns about integrity of the competition. And I think basically the idea it comes from the fans is wrong. I'm sure it comes from the owners, though. I agree. I think it's them who want it.
I met a guy, I was at the tailgate before the game against Liverpool. Very briefly, I went in and I met a guy there who really did want it and seemed a bit... Okay. Confused as to why I would have any objection to it. But then he called me British. So, what can you do? I don't think he was thinking right. Maybe he'd had a few too many Bud Lights or whatever it was. But,
maybe he thought you were me. I had quite a few people who thought I was you. That's for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know. Maybe our accents all sound the same to these guys.
They've obviously never seen us. You're the giant duck guy. I'm the bald one.
That's the weird thing, is that I was wearing the duck mask the whole time. Yeah, they were like, Andrew.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong to want it. I just am saying that I think the idea there's this huge groundswell of support for it out here and clamour is not necessarily borne out.
No. I could tell you who I would put a big deal of money on not wanting it. One person in particular would be Mikel Arteta.
Yeah.
Or any other manager, actually, for that matter, because I can't understand why, when we live in an era of marginal gains, where they're looking at every 0.001% that they can squeeze out of the squad physically, mentally, structurally, tactically, organizationally, all of these things, why you would agree to a game which is going to cost you some of those marginal gains because of travel and because of jet lag and time zones, and also your home advantage potentially for a game. Like if it was, announced that an Arsenal home game was going to take place in New York or Chicago or Los Angeles, I think Mikel Arteta would really, really, really hate that idea.
Maybe, although I guess Arsenal have put quite a lot of work in making some of those cities feel like a home from home. And all the friendlies we attended this summer, Arsenal did feel like they had a kind of home advantage, although it is very much not their home.
Yeah.
I think the travel would be a huge obstacle. And again, it's sort of the integrity of the competition, keeping it even, keeping it fair. How do you determine that? The thing is, for all I say about fans not necessarily clamouring for it, if it did happen, those fans would still buy tickets. So I think for the owners, they'll look at it as like a potentially lucrative money spinner.
Yeah. But I mean, would it be a case that, let's say Arsenal had a game in the US, to maintain the sporting integrity of the competition, would Ipswich have to have a game in the US as well?
Well,
would every team have to play a game in the US for there to be a level playing field at the end of the season? Because it could be a case that, one team gets to play one more, in inverted commas, home game than others. And there's the difficulty. There's another part of the difficulty, with all due respect to Ipswich, and I've forgotten every other club that's in the Premier League apart from the ones I truly hate.
It's just us and Ipswich, I think.
Is that it? But if it was Ipswich against Southampton or Nottingham Forest, or another small team like Tottenham against Brentford or something, I'm sure they have fans, but they're not going to sell out the big stadiums. I don't think they will or would. So it seems to be an idea that is restricted to the top 6, top 8, maybe. But if other clubs are not playing a game away from home, then how do you maintain that integrity in the league?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that I think is why the sort of infamous 39th game was mooted, which again would fundamentally shift the nature of the competition. I do think we will see things start to happen from European football. A lot of people say La Liga will be the first movers on this, and that others may follow suit. I suppose what's logical, to my mind anyway, is that English football takes something like the Community Shield and exports that. I genuinely see no harm whatsoever in something like that. Whether that would satisfy the demand or the owner's sort of eagerness, I don't know. But that feels to me like that. When we talk about things being an inevitability, that to me does feel inevitable, that game will go.
Could do, but then you've got a team that has to travel, or two teams rather, that have to do transatlantic travel the week before the season starts. So yeah, I don't know.
But I think that probably the reality is that the commercial opportunities that would come with it, I think clubs would still do it. But yeah, I'm sure Mikel Arteta would be less than thrilled.
Speaking of Mikels
yes.
From the Basque region, from San Sebastian, the Scotland of Spain, as we know, there is more and more chatter about Mikel Merino, about his potential arrival, although he reported back for training with Real Sociedad today. So it's not as if he's on, the plane over or anything like that. But that does look like the one that's potentially the closest thing to happening just at this moment in time.
Yes, certainly the one that's in the public domain. And I think...
What's going on here?
That isn't meant to sound as exciting as it does.
Well, it sounded exciting to me.
Yeah.
Immediately, he knows something.
It's more about playing down some of the excitement about Mikel Merino, if that makes any sense. I think that I think that obviously there's a lot of reporting around that situation, and not all of it is accurate as far as I can tell. I don't think it's as advanced as some reports would lead you to believe. That's not to say it won't happen. I think there's a very, very good chance that it does, but I don't think, as you say, he's reported for training today, and I don't get the sense that anything is especially imminent on that front. I think there's quite a long way to go, and I think there are other options in that position that Arsenal will be exploring.
Yeah.
Now, I do think that he seems to be Mikel Arteta's preference, and I find it hard to get away from my suspicion that ultimately Mikel Arteta gets what Mikel Arteta wants. So if I was putting money on it, I'd say he probably will be an Arsenal player, but whether it will be in time for, this week or the upcoming friendlies, I'm less confident on that.
We had a question that was sort of adjacent to that, which I want to ask you now that it's come up. Boom, boom, boom. Basically, I can't find it now.
Sure.
No, I opened up loads here.
You can have too many questions sometimes.
You can. But basically the question was whether or not there's any kind of disharmony when it's reported that certain players are wanted by Mikel Arteta. And the inference, of course, is that, this is Arteta insisting on a player that maybe other people in the recruitment department might not want as much as he does. And is that something we should be concerned about or not? I'm sorry to whoever asked it. It was a good question, but I can't find where the hell it is.
I know. Well, I'll talk and you see if it appears by magic. But
okay.
I think that I always think very carefully about using wording like that, because the question is right in that it can give the sense of some sort of disharmony. But I think it's just the reality of any process in any business. If you think about how recruitment works, at the top, yes, you've got Mikel Arteta and Edu, but beneath them you have sizable teams of people. On Arteta's side, there's obviously the coaching staff. On Edu's side, it's much deeper than that. You've got his recruitment team, the wider scouting team, the data team, the medical department. We're talking, I don't know, sometimes 20 to 30 people's opinions.
Sure.
So the idea that like every signing Arsenal make, everyone 100% agrees and thinks it's definitely the right thing to do is just fundamentally quite unrealistic. What I would say is that by the time a player arrives, so with Calafiori, for example, I think I wrote that he was kind of Arteta's choice and Arteta was the one who drove the move, and really pushed for the player to come in. But I think if Edu was a complete out on it, he would have a veto as sporting director.
Sure.
He would absolutely be able to say, no, we're not doing this. So I think by the time a player signs, it's right to call them a club signing and a club decision. But I think along that journey, there are points where there's debate and differences of opinion. But that presumably is true in any business with any multi-million pound decision, right?
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I was looking again for the question, haven't been able to...
Oh, sorry, yeah.
No, I just haven't been able to find it to give that person credit for the question, so apologies again. But yeah, no, I mean, it was, that's what sort of occurred to me as well, is that I think ultimately, a manager with the kind of strength of personality that Mikel Arteta has might be someone who could get his own way, but I don't think it happens if he wants a player and everyone else is going, no, we can't get this guy, we've got too many objections to it. I think it is just part of the process that they work through these things. Who would be the best fit? Like there might have been other defenders up for discussion this summer, right? Around Arsenal. We know that they have had an interest in Mark Gahey, for example, but was Gahey as gettable, let's say, than Calafiori in this window? And then do they come to that decision based on not simply the preference, but who might be available and who might be easiest to get a deal done for.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, stylistically as well. I found it. Edward First. There we go. I couldn't live with myself.
Was it on Twitter or was it on the Discord?
It's on Twitter. And Edward says, with Calafiori and Mourinho, James and others have referenced that not everyone at Arsenal is in agreement about them. Should we read this as evidence of disunity as someone is briefing about this Discord? Now, I would say I haven't written that not everyone is in agreement. Maybe others have, but that's not what I've said. I would say something like, Mikel Arteta was particularly emphatic in pushing for this player, but I don't think I would have written not everyone agrees, because I would be conscious of the implication of disunity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the reality is, just sort of to repeat myself, the reality is, like in any decision-making process, there are moments where people aren't exactly on the same page. But I feel like to write that, you have to be very responsible, because you can very easily create a kind of, if the aggregators get hold of that, very easily you can create a kind of social media narrative of, well, Edu wanted this player and Mikel wanted this player. And if they succeed or fail, they respectively must pay the price, kind of thing.
Yeah. Edu and Arteta having a duff up around the back of the bike sheds, at the end of the day, we'll fight to see whose player we sign.
Which is not the reality, the reality is more like, Merino's a great example, right? This is a player Mikel Arteta loves, right? That much I know, and I know it's a long-term admiration. But would the club not be doing their job properly if they didn't say, well, hang on, this guy's 28, he doesn't fit the profile that we typically recruit within.
Age profile, I guess, yeah.
Age profile, yeah. He's going to come in with a significant salary. In terms of squad building, we've got two central midfielders already who are, 32, 33, and Thomas Partey and Jorginho. Is that necessarily the right move? And it's not to say it's not, but the questions have to be asked, right?
100%. I think you're right to frame it in that way as well. That let's look at this, from all angles, and maybe it is the right move. And I hope if he does come, he is the right player. I think he is a good player. There will be discussions, but yeah, like as a process, should you not question certain things and see if you can go in a different direction? And if that direction is not the right direction, and you come back to where you started and you think that's the right decision, then fair enough. But it's not a situation where you've just gone, well, let's get this guy. Okay. You have to be a bit more involved than that.
And also, just to say about sort of Mikel being heavily involved in recruitment is designed for him to have kind of the final say. The process is, there's a positional need, the recruitment department identify and watch players that they can then present to the manager, where in theory he then makes his choice, right? Now, it doesn't always work as logically as that in terms of the chronology, but that is literally how it's designed. So Mikel being influential in some respects is not news.
What about this one from Irish Gooner, who's at Irish Gooner 89? He says, what's your stance on the Nketiah deal? I think it's in reference to Marseille. Are we right to push for a higher fee, or should we admit defeat and sell? I can see both sides, but we need better, and him staying hinders that. So this is off the back of reports that Marseille had made an offer of 27 million and Arsenal are holding out for a bit more, and I don't quite know how much of all of that is true. I think if they'd offered 27, we might have been inclined to take it. But yeah, where do you see this one going with Eddie? And is there a need to sort of just accept the player value? I don't know. I feel like if 27 million was on offer for Eddie Nketiah, I would take it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think especially when you consider he's not going somewhere within the Premier League if he goes to Marseille. So, there's not the same kind of money out there. I actually don't know how Marseille have got all this money, because they've already bought a couple of other players this summer. I know they've, knocked Ober off the wage bill, but I don't think it will free them up that much financially. Maybe they've sold someone for huge cash that I don't know about. And so, yeah, he's not going within the Premier League if he goes to Marseille. So there's less of a kind of competitive loss. You're not worried about he's going to score against us twice a season. So, yeah, I'm a bit surprised if that's true that Arsenal wouldn't do that deal, which makes me think it's probably not true.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's 27 million in name, but when you take a closer look at the numbers and the schedules of payments and what the add-ons actually are, if it's 27 million if Marseille win the Champions League, for example, Arsenal might be like, well, we're never going to see that. So
yeah, if Eddie scores 30 goals every season for 5 seasons, you get 5 million or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about how realistic some of these add-ons and clauses are. I think if we get into that region, then Eddie will go. I just wonder if maybe Edu and Arsenal are thinking there might be a Premier League club who comes to the table, because that would maybe change the financial dynamic. Mm-hmm. We got 34 million from Will Smith Rowe. Now I think he's a player with sort of a better reputation than Eddie, but for a striker who has played for England, I don't think it's inconceivable that Arsenal could get over 30 million from an English club who, if they really wanted Eddie. So I do wonder if there's a thing of maybe just saying, well, let's see if anyone else comes to the table. Because I actually think, while I think Marseille would be a great move for Eddie, from what I gather, he'd rather stay in the Premier League if he can. So it might be that they're sort of waiting to see if a situation happens which could suit everybody.
Sure. And the other one who, we've talked about potentially moving on this summer is Reiss Nelson, and there doesn't seem to be much going on in terms of him, unless you have some information that's not in the public domain.
No, I don't. I don't. Like I say, I've sort of been off over the weekend, but I think that one is kind of inevitable. But it's just a question of time, isn't it? I guess now we've got all our players back training at least anyway. It frees up the likes of Eddie and Nelson to potentially move on.
It's a big week, though. This is the final week of preseason. Basically, a game against Bayer Leverkusen on Wednesday, then a game against Lyon on Sunday, and after that, we're kicking off against Wolves. So
mad.
It is crazy how quickly it's gone. Absolutely nuts. I don't know where the time has gone. I know there was the Euros and everything else, but it just does not feel like if it stopped. Actually, there's a question. Mikel Arteta, blimey, who had a question about, how fast the summer went, and if I don't feel like the break was long enough, how exhausted must our players feel? Saw Saka, Saliba, Raya, Ramsdale, Reiss, all back in training, all on the pitch, all getting ready for whether, they play the game on Wednesday or Sunday, but getting ready for Wolves next weekend.
Yeah. Honestly, even when you said it then, it's Wolves next weekend, it hadn't quite struck me quite how soon that is. Yeah. Crazy. But, at least we've got, a few players back, and looking forward to seeing them over the next week or so. I think, I can't remember if those friendlies are sold out or not, but I think they are streamed live on Arsenal.com anyway. So
yeah,
people will have a chance to see them. But yeah, you'd imagine that they'll be eased in, the likes of Saka and Reiss. But I do hope they've had a restful break, because it, feels like a minute ago they were
in the final of the Euros
final.
Yeah. But, above and beyond that, I suppose, from Arteta's perspective, what he might want to do with his team, whatever way he might want to tweak his team to not be the same as last season. These are the last 2 games he has, before he has to pick a team and pick a tactical approach for Wolves. And then, obviously, after Wolves, there's a couple of pretty difficult fixtures as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I spoke, maybe it was on the show last week, about being in America 2 summers ago, and Arteta kind of finding the back four with Zinchenko at left back and White at right back. I don't think he's really had the players at his disposal to be in a position to kind of implement anything like that at this point in time. You know, he spent all this money on Calafiori. If he sees Calafiori as the left back, I think we need to see that at this point in time. I think we need to see it on the field and in practice. And the how the midfield's going to function as well. There are question marks and things for him to solve. So intrigued to see how he approaches that in the next couple of games.
And just sort of finally, before we take a break, I think maybe you said this or we talked about it last week when we were recording, but it feels like a transfer window where a lot is probably going to happen in the last couple of weeks. And that might be, another challenge on top of, players being away, not having the full complement there. And then sort of, I don't want to say instability, but obviously the sort of players going out and maybe players coming in the final couple of weeks of the season and getting those players up to speed and ready, to go straight into, a squad that is already very competitive, but one that I think we need to be even more competitive.
Yeah, I mean, it's the end of the month is Saturday, August 31st. So I guess the deadline's probably the 2nd, which is the Monday. Then I think there's an international break directly after that. So I do wonder if this will be one of those seasons where it kind of doesn't necessarily feel like it's properly started until we're in September. It's like we're seeing a lot of teams with squads leaving people out because they're on the verge of a move or haven't got the signings in that they wanted yet. And they can be pretty defining periods. If you're not ready when the season kicks off, if you have a bad start, if you're trying to win the title, you can't afford a bad start.
No.
So, and we've got tough games as well. So, it is an interesting summer and an interesting start to the season. I wonder if we might, we're just talking about what Arteta might implement, what he might change. I do wonder how tempted he'll be to just kind of lean on what worked last season in the opening games because of not having time, not having the players he wants. And I do wonder if the evolution we might see might be something that happens more over the course of the season than in the summer, particularly.
Sure, yeah. That makes sense. The window closes August 30th, by the way, so it doesn't go across that weekend. So it's it's earlier than usual on the Friday. So yeah, we'll wait and see what happens there. All right, we will take a little bit of a break here, and we'll come back with some more of your questions in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast excerpt. This is part 2 of the show where we answer questions that you sent to us on Twitter at GunnerBlog and at Arseblog. Also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. And if you do want to get involved with our Patreon, the new season is starting, so you get a preview podcast for every game. We do the 30, our Premier League roundup podcast. We've got our fantasy football game coming up, which is exclusive to Patreon members. You can win cash prizes, you can win shirts, you can win our famous 4th place trophy. There's Discord, there's all sorts. If you want to get on board, you can sign up for $6 a month, which is the price it was when we launched it in 2019, thereabouts. So it's not gone up one bit. You can get on board at patreon.com/Arseblog, and hopefully you'll be with us throughout the new season and beyond. Okay. Seeing as you're in America, you can go first because it's earlier there.
That actually does make sense. Here's one from Joe Arsenal. And Joe says, "Morning, gents." Or afternoon in your case, Andrew. What is your take on the relative silence around the news of Arteta extending his contract? I had assumed it would be done in the summer, but it now looks unlikely to be done before the season starts. Do you think there'll be any movement on this soon?
There's a good question. What do I think about it? I mean, I'm not that worried. I don't feel particularly anxious about it, but I do wonder. It feels like it should be a pretty easy thing to do. So maybe they're just going to get their summer business done, do the player ins, the player outs, and then sit down with Arteta and get that done. Maybe that's what it is.
I have to ask, I guess, do you have any kind of deep fear that, Mikel doesn't intend to sign a new contract?
No, I don't think that. I don't have that. I mean, he might, but I don't have that fear or that kind of information. And it just strikes me that the way he's worked at Arsenal and the way he talks about Arsenal and the job that I feel he wants to be known for at Arsenal won't be complete until he wins something and wins a trophy. And unless there's some big schism that we don't know anything about, then I can't see him leaving before he achieves what he wants to achieve.
No, nor can I. I don't know what that strange scratching noise is, by the way. It sounded like a very big animal living in the walls of this hotel.
Right.
Maybe a bear? You get bears in America, don't you?
Yes, hotel bears are particularly the most common and vicious, so I would watch out.
Right.
Yeah.
I think on Mikel, I agree with you essentially. I think that the lack of noise around it probably speaks to the parties who are involved feeling pretty relaxed about the situation, very confident that they will strike an agreement. I think it would be great if it was sooner rather than later from a kind of timing perspective,
sure,
from a communications perspective, but I don't get the sense that there's any jeopardy particularly around it. And it may just be there are other priorities. We've spoken about how focused Mikel will be in this preseason period on getting the team right, getting the team ready. Maybe that's just taking precedence at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, do you think, if Mikel Arteta is really pushing, if he's going around the back of the bike sheds to beat the crap out of Edu to get the players that he wants, right?
Yeah,
that's
sure.
what you said, isn't it? Just so the aggregators can be clear.
Yeah.
But, if he is, going to bat for Calafiori, if he is going to bat for Mikel Merino, I think he'd have to give those players or their representatives some assurances that he's going to be there as well. And I think, it's not as if the deals would be dependent on that, but I think if there was any uncertainty, you might not, he might not be pushing as hard for those particular players, and B, that might have been part of the discussions that they had. So,
great point. I hadn't thought of it quite like that. And also, if there are players that he really wants, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that he could be using that as leverage in negotiations. Let's see what you do for me during this transfer window before I sign on the dotted line.
Yeah.
I'm not worried either. I think it will all be fine. I think it's more a question of when it happens, not if.
What about this one then from the Longshot blog, who's at Longshot Blogger on Twitter? And he says, I'd love your thoughts on how you think Arteta views Fabio Vieira. Personally, I think the glimmers of brilliance we've seen from him, the long-range shot against Brentford, cameo against Fulham last season, make him irresistible to Arteta.
It's a good question, I think the use of Vieira on the tour was quite interesting. He played exclusively on the right wing, I think, every minute he was on the field. And in my head, I was kind of trying to work out, is that basically because Bukayo Saka isn't here and somebody needs to do that job and Arteta's kind of chosen Vieira for it? Or is that because he actually sees that as his best role in the group? Because I don't think it's a good sign, really, for Vieira that he wasn't getting any minutes in those kind of number 8 positions.
Yeah.
So, I know everyone knows we need a backup for Saka. Does Arteta seriously? It was actually something I wanted to ask him in the last press conference, but I didn't quite get the opportunity.
They wouldn't let you in because you had a bag on.
Yeah, I had a bag and a duck mask, and they weren't happy with it. Actually, the duck mask, I think, was in the bag, so maybe that's fair enough. But, I don't know. I don't quite know what to make of that at this stage. I don't know if that's something we're going to see more of. I think he's just so wildly different to Bukayo Saka that I'm not sure it necessarily makes sense. What did you think about all that?
I thought it was interesting as well that he played on the right. I wondered if it was a case that because he was maybe the more senior man, he's better able to sort of perform in that position, thus allowing Mikel Arteta to have a look at Ethan Nwaneri in the central position in those games that he played. I don't necessarily find Vieira on the right a particularly convincing option, I have to say. I wouldn't have him as my first choice backup for Bukayo Saka at this moment in time. And I'm not sure he's irresistible to the manager. So I don't quite know what his role is going to be this season. I'm sorry, actually, you didn't get a chance to ask him that question.
Well, there'll be other opportunities. But I think, I do wonder if the playing on the right thing, he was asked during the tour about playing Jurrien Timber at centre-back with Ben White at right-back and why that was. And he basically said, well, it's making one change rather than two and allows us to kind of use some of the patterns of play we've already established. Mm-hmm. So I do wonder if he looked at it and was like, well, I want to try and recreate that right-hand side dynamic with Ben White and Martin Odegaard. So it's got to be a left-footed player on the right, rather than a Reiss Nelson or a Gabriel Jesus, because it's got to be someone who comes in field to create space for White on the overlap. And I wonder if that was part of the thinking in terms of selecting Vieira there. In terms of what the plans are for him, I mean, I think it was kind of a dogfight. It's a dogfight out there, dog.
It's a dogfight, dog.
With famous words of Matt Turner, of course. But I think it was kind of a dogfight between him and Smith Rowe for a spot in the squad. And it's ostensibly he's won, Vieira. But I still don't feel that much better about his prospects, despite that.
It's a big season for him. I think if he doesn't perform this season, then how long do you keep going with a guy if he doesn't play very much, or he doesn't perform, or he doesn't give you any end product, or he doesn't bring much to the table? Like, I hope he can. I think he's clearly got some talent, but I just don't know where he's going to play. I don't think he should be playing right wing unless, we're 5-0 up and it's a second half, throw him on there, no problem.
Yeah.
But if we had a big game tomorrow and Bukayo Saka wasn't available, he would not be my first pick to be the Saka deputy. No chance. So...
And if Mikel Merino does sign in central midfield, is that a bad thing for Fabio Vieira? Possibly.
Yes, probably.
Maybe because of that. That's why, again, they want to play him from the right, because they think if he's going to get minutes, he's going to be in the Martin Odegaard position. So better to have him on that half of the pitch and acclimatise him to it. I don't know. But yeah, I don't feel confident about his prospects.
Is it my question or your question? Anyway, let me ask this one though, because it's there, and you mentioned Jurrien Timber playing in a different position, and JDH, who's at JDH_14, says, "Good afternoon, guys. I hate to be that Arsenal fan, but I'm going to do it. Does Timber not fit a defender who could play in midfield for us? He's technically brilliant. He needs to be in the team, and given how combative and powerful he is, he'd be a great option in there."
Can I answer your question with a question?
Yeah.
Okay. So Will, who's at Wilmer Clock, says, in some of our most exciting seasons, we see a player make a surprise change of position with us to great effect. He adds, I loved Merce to the wing in 91, Rocky to centre mid in 92, Petit to central midfield in 98, Kolo to centre back in 2004. Who is your bet to switch position this year? Is it going to be Fabio Vieira? Is it going to be Jurrien Timber in midfield? But by the way, I do think the Timber in midfield thing, I don't think that will happen. I think he'll play from right back, left back, possibly centre back at times, and he'll spend plenty of time in midfield. But when we do our pre-match graphic, I don't see him being picked as one of those midfield players, if that makes any sense.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. And it is, I think, it's in the DNA of Arsenal fans to want to turn a centre-half or a defender into a defensive midfielder. It's a history and a tale as old as time, but I don't really see it. I think, what Timber gives us across the back line is something Mikel Arteta missed last season. I think he'll play a lot of games back there. So I don't really see that. Could he potentially do it in a push? Yeah, for sure. I don't doubt he has the quality and the intelligence to be able to do a job in there. But is that something Mikel Arteta would do or something we should do? I'm not sure. As for the other question about which player might change position,
yeah,
I mean, I can't really see.
I mean, technically, if Calafiori does play left back, that is a bit of a change in that he's spent the season playing at centre half last year.
Yeah,
I know he's played left back before. People often ask about Zinchenko in midfield.
They do, as like a left 8 kind of a thing.
Niels August said, "Hi gents, do you think we might see Zinni in midfield, considering we're quite stacked at left back?"
I don't.
No, me neither. I guess if I had to give one, I would say, I mean, it doesn't really count, but I wonder if we might see more of Gabriel Jesus playing on the wing this season than we've been accustomed to seeing.
Yeah, I mean, that was when I was talking about who would be my first choice as backup for Bukayo Saka. I never mentioned who that was. And it would be Gabriel Jesus, and I think he can play left, he can play right, and we saw that last season. He played on the right when Bukayo Saka was injured for the game against Manchester City, was it? The game against City at home?
Yeah, I think so. And he played on the left at the Etihad.
So he can do that. He can do that. And I think if Nelson and Nketiah are to leave before the end of the window, I do think we need another signing, but I think that also means we're likely to see more of Gabriel Jesus as a wide player than we have done. I'm not saying there won't be games where he plays centre forward. I think there will, but I think it would increase the need for him to play in one of those positions unless, we bring in somebody else who's going to be able to be that versatile and play across the front three. So
yeah, I'm with you.
I think it's your question.
It's my question. Okay. Good afternoon, lads. Recent club ambassador Theo Walcott published his autobiography in August 2011 at just 21 years of age. Which player in the current squad do you feel would have the most interesting autobiography if written right now? I mean, if we win the league, probably some will come out. That's how these things often work.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose Martin Odegaard might be a very interesting one in the sense that he, from a very early age, from 14, 15, was going to all the clubs and, he was one of the most highly rated young players in Europe, signed for Real Madrid at 15. And, that's a big club. That's a big amount of not responsibility, but you know what I mean, a bit of pressure to have on your shoulders. So those years at Real Madrid, with the loan moves that he went through, and then coming to Arsenal and that becoming permanent could be quite interesting. I also wonder about someone like Tomiyasu, what it might mean for a young player to move from Japan to Europe and all the very significant cultural differences that might be part of his story. Could make for an interesting book, but I do kind of feel like footballers shouldn't release books at least until they're retired, and in fact most of them shouldn't at all. But that's just me, maybe.
I think I'd throw Saka in as well, just because he's experienced so much in his young career. But I think Odegaard, from that perspective, is a great shout too. And he's had that kind of unusual trajectory of, wonder kid to not quite making the cut at Madrid, then coming again at Arsenal. And he seems like an intelligent guy who you could get some good content out of. As a ghostwriter, you could probably wring a fair bit out of him. So I think that is actually a decent shout.
Magnus Holmberg, at Magnus_Holmberg on Twitter. What will Ramsdale's role in the squad be if he doesn't find another club in this window?
I'm thinking maybe substitute goalkeeper. I don't know why. I just got a feeling. That's going to be the crazy,
I feel like a fucking
unpredicted
moron now for asking that question.
No, I know what he means though.
He
means when's he going to play and how much is he going to feature. I have to be honest and say I still think it's quite a slim prospect that he's still here. I know that there's not a great deal of noise about him going, but that to me does feel like one that will get attended to in the final period of the window. Now,
sure,
maybe I'm wrong, and if he is still here, I guess he'll have to try and fight for a place. I mean, he caught a bit of flack on social media, I saw, because I don't know if it was just the images that came out from training, but it seemed like David Raya had come back to training, a day earlier than Ramsdale. And I saw a few people saying stuff like, well, he's just been sitting on the bench at the Euros. He should be here. He should be, training and being part of the group. I do understand that, but I suspect that he feels like his race is kind of run at Arsenal. Going to be interesting though, isn't it? Like, will they give him a game next week?
Like 45 minutes in one of the friendlies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so. Because, what if David Raya gets hurt,
Yeah.
But what if Aaron Ramsdale gets hurt? That might be in Arsenal's mind too.
That's true, yeah.
I really don't know. I don't think... I don't see the hierarchy shifting particularly. Raya won the Golden Glove last season, and when Ramsdale did play, he didn't show his best. So I think the answer is a lot of time on the bench if he stays. Maybe the domestic cups would be kind of... I think to be honest, that's about the best that any goalkeeper who's back up to Raya can hope for, because we saw last season that once Raya was established, despite saying, I might rotate and, take it game by game, we saw that Mikel Arteta doesn't really like to do that. He likes the stability and the consistency of sticking with his number one goalie.
Maybe the bigger question is, what's going to happen with David Raya when on August 29th, Mikel Arteta spends 30 million on another goalkeeper that he likes better than David Raya?
It's kind of like goalkeeper Russian dolls, or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting one. Do you have any sort of gut feeling on it?
It just feels to me like they'll find somewhere for him to go. There'll be somewhere for him to go and play. I think Ramsdale will probably go on loan. You've spoken about the valuation. People have written about the valuation that Arsenal have of certain players and whether the market is there. But perhaps as things get moving towards the end of the window, there might be an opportunity for him to go and play. I get the very strong feeling that Aaron Ramsdale would absolutely hate being just number 2 goalkeeper for another season and not playing, maybe only playing Carabao Cup or some FA Cup games. I feel like he would really not like that. And I'm sure it's probably not something he wants or that would be good for him or his career. So, I think everybody's cognizant of that. So I'd be surprised if something didn't happen before the end of the window.
It's just tough as a keeper, isn't it? It's, as much as we would say of someone like Smith Rowe, it's hard, they don't get opportunities. As a keeper, you really don't get opportunities.
No.
It's like you need a sort of a freak event, essentially, for you to get on the pitch. So I think that is quite a dispiriting position to be in. But he's under contract, a very well-paid one. And so as long as he's at Arsenal, I think the expectation is that he'll keep pushing. But like you, I think it'll be resolved late in the window. I wonder if the club were to get money for Eddie and Reiss and maybe Nketiah or something, might their stance on Ramsdale soften a bit? I suspect it would in that kind of circumstance.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so.
What did I have? Oh, yes. We might have done this before, but I can't remember. So Rohit Jyotish, I hope I've got that right, says, if Arsenal were to compete in the Olympics, who would be bringing home the gold medals in individual or team events outside of football?
Do you have any players who are really good at breakdancing? I don't know.
I don't know. I'm trying to think.
I don't know. I haven't really been watching too much of the Olympics. There's some running and swimming and jumping, and I saw a story about a guy who knocked the pole vault off with his Mickey. That seems an
I did see that
one.
I did see that. I mean, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away.
I guess so.
But that's unfortunate. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know who. I guess if you're looking at like the sprint events, could be looking at no. Martinelli.
No.
I don't actually mean that they would win, but I just mean like who would we enter? You know, if it was like Sports Day at London Colney, who's doing what event?
I think Jorginho with the egg and spoon.
Yeah,
would be very good at that, the egg and spoon race. Who's the Olympic champion of sack racing? I don't know who that is. But
I'm not sure they've had it yet.
They haven't? That's this weekend. High profile ones like the 100 metres, 1500 metres and the sack race.
Sack race.
Yeah. Oh, they did the 100 metres already, didn't they?
I think so. I like you, especially with the time difference, I'm really not across it, which is a shame because I quite enjoy the Olympics. But there we go.
Ireland have had some medals. We've had some medals in swimming and something else. Rowing, I think, as well, which is good.
That's great.
Yeah. We're only a small country, you know.
Rowing. I mean, they all do that in the gym, I imagine, at Arsenal.
Yeah.
Someone like Gabriel would be good at that.
You reckon?
Jorginho could be the little... Or Trossard could be the guy who sits on the front of the boat. You know, the little guy.
The Cox.
Yeah, sure.
So you're going back to the pole vault guy.
Oh, that's the pole vault guy. Right.
That's the pole vault guy.
Anyone... I mean, pole vault, I always say this, I think is the most terrifying sport. Like... I'm just like, I can't get my head over it. Head round it.
Yeah.
But I can't get my body over it. I can't get my head round it.
Like, where the fuck did it come from?
I know. I don't know. Who did that the first time?
And everyone went, whoa, that's we should have competitive whatever that guy just did. Where did the...
And how do you train to become one? Like, how do you... Like, is it like what you're one day you're running and jumping, and then one day they're like, okay, you're ready to have the big stick now? Like,
yeah,
it's so insane.
History recorded an early pole vaulting competition at the Ulverston Football and Cricket Club, Cumbria, in 1843. So clearly some fucking dude in Cumbria got pissed up on Scrumpy or Mead or something and said, watch this, lads, I'm going to jump over a fence with a stick. And then everyone went, wow, that's amazing. Modern competition began around 1850 in Germany. That said, Wikipedia is telling me that pole vaulting were known to the Greeks, Minoan Greeks, and Celts. I don't know. I wouldn't fancy it. I'd definitely die if I did pole vaulting.
Oh, 100%. And is there anyone in the Arsenal squad, do you think, who could be up to that challenge?
Declan Rice.
Great.
He just strikes me as like the all-round sportsman guy. Like he's probably good at golf and probably good at cricket and probably decent at tennis. And, you know, he's got that kind of thing going on.
Someone who was away with Arsenal actually during the US tour was saying that to me. They were like, because the players played a lot of table tennis while they were away. And they were like, it's sickening how they can just all do everything. Like Leo Trossard played pool against a bunch of journalists and just destroyed them. like completely took them apart. And it was the same. Like anytime anyone who wasn't a player tried to take on one of the players at table tennis, they were just demolished.
Is that why the England players always play journalists at darts?
Yeah, I think partly.
Right.
Well, I don't know why they do it, but I think the players do usually win. It turns out these elite athletes are pretty handy at whatever they...
Lots of stuff, yeah.
Lots of stuff that involves coordination, yeah.
Well, look, I did have another question there about the importance of winning trophies next season, but it feels like it's too serious a discussion to have at this point. We've already talked about a guy knocking off a bar with his willy, so.
Yeah, it's hard to go back from there.
To serious football discussion, so. Plus.
But wouldn't it be nice if, if we knocked Man City off their perch.
With our Mickeys.
With our Mickeys.
Right. Watch out, Pep. This season is going to be one you'll never forget. All right, look, we better let you go and pack and get to the airport and hopefully catch your flight back to London after such a long time.
When they don't let me
away.
in, I'll say, that's not very nice.
That's not very nice.
When the flight's cancelled, that's not very nice.
Not very nice. I get to passport control. I don't have my passport with me, but look. Look at me. Look at me. You know who I am. That's not very nice. That's not very nice.
I'll try. I'll be trying everything.
Try it all. Drop the old podcaster Billy Bollocks thing. That'll work a charm, I'm sure. All right. Well, look, we'll leave it there. Thank you, guys. Hopefully next week our voices will be in better shape and less croaky and scraggledy than they are right now. But as ever, thank you very much indeed for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.